we're going to be talking about the about the GMAT Focus here. Sorry about that. Hang on just a second. I'm gonna have to reshare my screen here. I got a second. Okay. There we go. Share screen. Share, and we'll start the slideshow for you guys again. And here we go. Okay. What we're going to be talking about today is the GMAT Focus, and specifically 3 strategies to nail the GMAT Focus. And before we start, just wanted to let you guys know that Leland does these free kinds of events all the time, and they have tons of great resources too. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I would highly recommend just going ahead and signing up for Leland. You can use that QR code right there in the right corner and sign up. And the other thing that I would highly recommend is, if you're like me, you're probably finding that this application process to grad school is a little longer and maybe a little bit more robust and maybe a little harder than you thought. And when I was doing this gave me a little bit there, I didn't have a Leland to kind of help me out. So there were good tutors out there. There were good people to help me with my application and all of that, but they were really hard to find. The great thing about Leland is they have amazing people here, and they're all here kind of in one place. So if you want great resources and great help, check out Leland. You're going to be really impressed with the folks that they have to help you out, and every single one of them is just, invested in your success. Okay, let's talk about the GMAT and the GMAT Focus. So, actually, we're going to talk about me for just a second, and this is the boring part for sure. So I've been coaching the GMAT for over 10 years. I've got my MBA from Wharton. I've been doing this at UCLA. I am the founder of First Choice Admissions. But what probably matters to you guys more than anything else is, just for being here, I'm going to offer you guys $250 off a coaching package, or 15% off my hourly coaching rate. And if we'll do the details on that at the end for anyone that's interested. All right, now on to the GMAT Focus. So here's what we're going to do today. So we're going to do a quick overview of the GMAT Focus, because I know this thing is new, and a lot of people are still getting their information about this from the internet, which is great. About half the internet is amazing, and about half the internet is, well, terrible. And the problem is you don't know which half. So I'm just going to give you the straight scoop here. And then after we do that, we're going to dive right into 3 strategies to raise your score. Okay, so first of all, this is the structure for the new GMAT Focus. So there are now 3 sections to the GMAT Focus. There's the quant, the verbal, and the data insights. Each one of these sections contributes to your overall score. So it used to just be quant and verbal, then you had the data insights and the essay, and they were scored separately. Now the data insights, which used to be IR, is now part of your score. Here's the good news. There's some good news here. Notice the time is much shorter. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is awesome. And there are fewer questions per section, which is how they cut down the time. Now, that's both good and bad. It's good because you don't have to concentrate for so long, because frankly, 4 hours was ridiculous. Here's the thing though, because there are fewer questions, each question counts a little bit more. So we're going to talk about that, because we're going to get into kind of the scoring algorithm here a little bit later on. But that's an important piece. But overall, it's really good news for most test takers. The raw scores are between 60 and 90, and your total score, and it's not an addition of just your raw scores, but the total scores now go from 205 to 805. Couple things. You can take these sections in any order that you want. There's also one 10-minute break. You don't have to take it, but you can take that 10-minute break whenever you want to as well. And the other thing is you are allowed to mark and change up to 3 answers per section. Now we're going to talk a little bit about like whether you should do that or not in a little bit, but you certainly can do that. All right. So there's one other thing about like what's on the test. They haven't added anything, but they've dropped some stuff. There's no essay, so that makes the test shorter. That's awesome. There is no sentence correction. There's no geometry. There is still data sufficiency, but data sufficiency only exists on the data insights section. In other words, the quant section does not have any data sufficiency in it. Also, and this is important, and I get asked this all the time, is there new material that's been added onto the test in any way? And the answer is no. There is no new material on the test. It's all the same material. They've just cut a bunch out and they put the data sufficiency into the data insight section. Okay. Now they have taken this opportunity to rearrange the scoring here. So what happens on standardized tests, and I'm not a statistician, so I don't understand exactly why this happens, but over time the scores creep up. And so back when I was going to Wharton, the median score for my incoming class was actually about 685. Now that was still the 95th percentile, but that was 685. So what they need to do is, for all these standardized tests, they have to recalibrate the scores. Now the SAT did this famously in the 90s, and I ended up getting like dumber, 10 years after I graduated from college. And the GMAT has taken this opportunity to recalibrate the scores on the GMAT Focus. Now, while this is going to be a little jarring to us on this side of it, taking the test, all of this has been very, very well communicated to the admissions offices here. So what that means is for most of you, when you start hitting a 675, that's about a 720 or 730 on the old format test, on that old GMAT. That puts you in about the 95th to 96th percentile. So for most of you, kind of depending, on your individual applications, that's the score at which you're going to start to get competitive for top schools. Now, another thing, as they get more and more information here, the data is likely to shift a little bit, but for the most part, it's not going to shift radically. But for the most part, this is what you're kind of shooting for, kind of 675 plus if you're shooting for a top program. Okay. Strategy number 1. Now we're into the strategies. The very first strategy I have for you, and this is really important, stop trying to get all the questions right. This is really important, and it goes to the heart of how the GMAT algorithm actually works and how you're scored. So this is a true story. So when the new Focus came out, everybody was waiting for the new practice test to come out, right? And everyone, certainly who does what I do for a living, we just couldn't wait to do this. Well, the new Focus practice test came out, and I got very sick. I got COVID. I was in bed, flat on my back, and days were ticking by, and I was anxious to take the test. I had a lot of anxiety about not taking the test, but oh my gosh. So one day I just pulled myself out of bed and I said, Bruce, what you're going to do is you're just going to focus, so to speak, on this. You're just going to take this thing. So I did that, and here's what happened. So on the first section, I took the DI first because it's, it's fiddly and stuff. And I had enough concentration. I did well through that. I didn't miss any, so I did great. Quant, I missed 3, which is, a pretty good run through the quant section, but for me, maybe it's a little rough. And then by the time verbal came around, I just didn't have the mental capacity to be able to focus that well anymore. I missed 6 on the verbal. And you can see this chart up above tells you where my percentile was for each of those sections. So I was 100th percentile in the data insights, 95th in the quant, 86th on the verbal reasoning. Here's a question for you guys. What do you think my score percentile was, knowing my individual performance on each of the sections? Well, I scored in the 100th percentile. Weird. How is that possible? Because the scoring algorithm isn't straightforward. You might think you know what's going on, but you don't actually. So the next time through, because I like playing around with the algorithm, because I need to understand how the algorithm works, I said, okay, next time through, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically intentionally miss about 20% of the questions. I'm going to miss about 4 to 5 questions per, per section. So the DI I missed 4, quant I missed 5, verbal I missed 4. Where do you think my score came out then? So my overall percentile was still in the 98th percentile. This is puzzling. So first of all, like, you don't need to get all the questions right to score very, very well. That's the very, very first takeaway.